Now that word atzab also appears in another very interesting verse, and this is not a spiritual coincidence. There's so much powerful interweaving of principles and concepts in Scripture, to the point that when you look at these things, you realize this book was not made by man. It was created by a God of infinite wisdom and knowledge. Now let's go to Jeremiah 44:19 to see how God uses the verb atzab in a different context. It says, Jeremiah 44:19, "And when we burned incense to the Queen of Heaven, and poured out drink offerings unto her, did we make her cakes to worship her, and pour out drink offerings unto her without our men?" Now, without going into the full details of what this verse is talking about, let's focus on something. First of all, notice that the women of Israel, who were talking, by the way, to the prophet Jeremiah, were saying that they were burning incense to the Queen of Heaven. And the word heaven is translated from the Hebrew word Shamah-Elim, which again means heavens in the plural. So they were worshiping the Queen of the heavens. And as we've seen before, the soul is female and the spirit is male. So as they were burning incense to the Queen of the heavens, they were, in other words, rendering worship to the matriarchy of the soul on earth. They were recognizing or emphasizing their submission to the soul, that the soul would reign as the female queen of the heavenly atmosphere on earth. So this once again emphasizes that man was not interested in establishing dominion over the heavens, and man was satisfied or content with having the soul be the one, the female soul being the one controlling human events and being in control of the human atmosphere, of the spiritual atmosphere on earth. Now it says here that we make her cakes. Make means, or it comes from the word asa, once again, that we fashion or make her cakes to worship her. Now the word worship was translated for some reason from the word atzab. I have no idea why they chose the word worship here, the King James translators. If you go to the English Standard Version, it says something like that we make her cakes that bear her image, which seems to correlate much better with the original meaning of the word atzab, which can be also translated as to, as we said, as to shape, to fashion, to stretch into. So I believe that even though it sounds like a mistranslation, the word worship here in the King James, there is a spiritual principle being defined here. You become what you worship. When you go before idols and you worship idols, and I'm not talking just about literal idols, but if you consider, for example, the Catholic Church and some other sects that where the worship of physical statues is still an accepted thing, it's an accepted abomination. If you go before an idol, whether literal or spiritual, and you worship it and you bow before it, you become like that idol. You start taking that shape. So you're being shaped into the likeness of the idol that you worship. If you worship a mute idol, you become spiritually mute. If you worship a deaf idol, you become spiritually deaf. So there's a correlation between worship and shaping. Now the thing is that it says here also, and we pour out drink offerings unto her without our men. Now here, in a certain sense, it's as if the women of Israel were saying to Jeremiah, when we did all these things, we did it under the covering of our leaders, of our men. The women were saying, we did it in subservience and submission to our male covering, which is what the church does all the time. A lot of people hide behind their quote-unquote human covering because it's the minister and the leadership of the church that is telling them to do this and that, They don't question it. They just do it. They carry out all these meaningless activities before God, and many of them are not only meaningless, they're abominable to God, spiritually abominable, even though they look all right on the outside. And they say, when I stand before God on Judgment Day, I'll be able to say, oh Lord, I didn't know. I didn't know that was meaningless or waste of time, or I didn't know that was an abomination. When I was doing it, I was just being obedient and submissive to the covering that you gave me. You gave me that pastor as a covering. You gave me that minister as my covering. So I was just doing what he was telling me to do. How can you blame me for that? That is basically what the women here are saying. And we were allowing the soul to take control. We were worshiping the Queen of the Heavens. We were making cakes that bear her image. So that means that they were focusing on that image. They were absorbing that image, because you can't make something out of in a certain shape if you don't meditate on that shape and try to be like that shape. As you fashion it, you're thinking about that shape. So when they were making cakes that bear the shape or the image of the Queen of the Heavens, they were focusing their attention. Their soul was being focused on what the Queen of the Heavens looked like. And as they were fashioning that cake, they were becoming like what they were fashioning. And that's why it's not a coincidence, once again, when you go to Genesis 1:26, which we read a few moments ago, and we see that God said, let us make man in our image and likeness. He was forming man to be a God manifestation on earth. And as a God manifestation, he will naturally take dominion. If you are manifesting the nature of God, you will naturally manifest the desire to take dominion. Period. Full stop. That's it. You cannot say that you are manifesting the nature of God if you have no intention, if you have no desire to take dominion over the spiritual atmosphere around you. It's impossible, because when God comes, he starts taking control. And when you have a God nature, your constant desire is to conquer, is to have conquest. That's what's in your heart.